Christine, welcome. It is post tax season. It's the
Yay.
24th of April. Everyone's all happy and smiling and just like well rested, right? You've been doing nothing but sleeping since, but we can't kick off a webinar without, and this is a tax talk webinar. I don't think I said that. Can't kick these off without the question of the day. We're going to call it the question of the month in honor of tax season. What was, how do you celebrate the end of tax season, which never really ends anymore, but how do you celebrate the official end of tax season?
It doesn't end anymore. So what back I started doing this years ago. Um this sound like I don't want to admit this, but it's my favorite thing to so we always celebrate. I always buy myself something like ridiculous that I wouldn't normally spend money on, So like something that I really want, but normally I would be like, I would never pay that much money for this ridiculous thing. So sometimes we'll go away for a weekend. Sometimes it's something that I've just been like waiting to buy that wasn't in the budget. But and now we send gifts to our team too, so we'll send them like spa gift cards or something like that, something that they wouldn't spend money on that might
Right?
be, out of the budget, just to be like, take a breather. But it doesn't end anymore. That's like the worst part.
Oh, so you're not going to tell us what you bought?
Um,
You
no,
don't
I
have
can't.
to. All right.
I like can't admit it out
Yeah,
loud.
I refuse to admit it. All right. Well, then it is your secret. So, all right. So this session of Tax Talks is analyzing tax season performance for next year's improvements. There is no CPE. This is only a 30-minute, unless we keep talking, then it's going to be longer than that, but it's about a 30-minute webinar. So there's no CPE. Do put your questions if you have them in the chat and be specific when you put it in there. And if the chat's not working, put them in the Q&A. But just be specific and say, hey, Christine, why won't you tell us what you bought yourself, the ridiculous purchase that you made for your post-tax season? So just be real specific in the question. We do have one poll question, and that is around our Be Insightful premium content program. Matt, if you could go ahead and post that. Basically, the Be Insightful premium program is premium content that's on the website. We also have a series of 9 categories of webinars that we do, typically 3 a month. Sometimes it's 2, sometimes it's 4, but on average about 3 a month. They are CPE eligible. Most of those also have a downloadable resource or some other specific content that's only accessible to our members. It's currently, I think it's $1 for the first month, and then $49 a month after that, or flat rate of $4.99, I believe. If you're going to be at Scaling New Heights, we will have an offer there as well, which will be about the 1-year anniversary of that program. So Christine, Scaling New Heights, I sent you a text about that the other day. We need to circle back on that. I know you have something planned, but hopefully we will see you there and you and I can catch up on that later. So that's it for me. I'm actually going fishing in about 4 hours. So I'll be out for the next couple of days, but I'll catch up with you next week.
That's your breather. There
Thanks.
you
That's
go.
right. Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks, Gary. Welcome, everybody. All right, let's get this slideshow up and started. Always my quick moment before we get going here. Okay, I'm going to share my screen and then we'll get our slide deck going. Enjoy my cute kids for a second. They're so much bigger than that now. I had to change the cute kid background photo for you guys. All right. Well, I'm keeping an eye on the chat and the Q&A. So I will try to keep an eye on both of those and make sure that I am answering any questions for you, or just the chat, it looks like. So go ahead and make sure that you post any questions that you have in there. Let me just check really quick, make sure that I'm not missing. I don't want to miss our Q&A. There we go. Get our Q&A box open and I'll keep an eye on those for you guys. Feel free to interrupt me at any point. We are talking about analyzing tax season performance today. I know I saw a bunch of you saying that you didn't get as much rest as you would have hoped for just yet. Same, we have a lot of extensions, so it's a quick breather and then it's back to work. Just want to give you another quick plug for the Be Insightful program. If you're not in there yet, we're really excited to be hosting a tax related session for that at the end of May. So, May 22nd will be my next tax session in the Be Insightful content that we'll be talking about. So, if you are not a part of that, make sure that you pop in, get that information, and not miss out on great content. If you're not subscribed to our newsletter, you can scan the QR code and make sure that you are not missing the weekly content from the newsletter as well. If we haven't met, welcome. Thanks for being here today. My name is Christine Gervais. I have been a licensed CPA officially for 15 years next month. I've been running my own practice for 9 years. Our practice just turned 9 this past April. Don't ask me why we started a tax practice in April. But that's our birth date. We run a small firm. We do bookkeeping, tax prep, that full range of services, like a lot of you. So a lot of my content is coming from that small practitioner perspective, and I try to make it really tangible and really just focused on what will hopefully be helpful for all of you. So today, like I mentioned, we're talking about post-tax season, analyzing post-tax season. Why do we care? Why are we not just all on vacation, sipping Mai Tais and trying to enjoy some time off? You can do that, but I do want to make sure that we talk about this before we get too far away from the end of tax season because it is important. The reason why we kind of want to have like a debrief, if you will, to look at how did tax season go? What worked? What didn't work? How do we do that? How do we do that effectively? Is because we are always looking to improve client service. We're always looking for strategic opportunities to improve our practices. That might mean improving our efficiency, retaining our staff, improving our technology stack, whatever might come of your sort of like debrief analysis is going to set you up for what you might want to work on, look at, make changes for before next season. And of course, my goal, which I always assume is very similar to many of yours, is that I'm always looking for ways to make tax season less stressful, more efficient, less stressful for our clients too. I don't know about you guys. I know that a lot of the times it can be very frustrating to sort of muddle your way through client behavior, incentivizing them to get you things on time and accurately. That can be the hardest part of tax season. So just, kind of looking at that full gamut of how do we look at all of these things that stress us out and slow us down and continuously try to improve them, not just for our own sanity and our health, but we've talked a lot in previous webinars, and I've also written a lot of articles on staff retention. We are continuing to see a decline in the number of individuals coming into accounting, getting accounting degrees, getting CPA licenses. And so we know that getting high quality staff is going to continue to be a challenge in the coming years. So we really want to look at how do we retain the staff that we have. And that's difficult to do if they're super stressed out. So the objective of us trying to kind of do this reflection post tax season is we want to be able to receive feedback, whether that be from our clients, our team, whatever various places make the most sense for you based off of your practice. And we want to be able to convert that feedback into improvement for those areas. We also want to be able to build scalable systems. I was just having a conversation with someone the other day, specifically on the decline in the number of team members available, the number of quality staff available when you're trying to fill roles, especially during tax season, especially in the tax space. And when I was talking with them, they made this comment, which I think is totally accurate. And it's really that the only way kind of around that issue going forward, because we don't have an abundance of individuals, coming out of college with accounting degrees. So right now we're not in a situation where we're just sort of like waiting for people to come up through the ranks. We have the opposite problem where it's declining. And the only way, sort of, around that problem is to look at technology and scalable systems. And so we'll talk about that a little bit today as well. Going to have to look at that in your practice. And now is the best time to do it because you have the furthest runway between now and next filing season to put those systems into place. And then, of course, we talked about it, reduce stress and improve productivity. One of the reasons we've seen such a decline in the profession over the last decade, or really 2 decades at this point, is because it's still viewed as a very high stress, long work hours. It's not attractive from that, flexible work schedule, flexible work environment, life balance sort of perspective. It's still viewed negatively in those lights. And so, us really taking the time to drill down into how we can make changes within our practice to break down some of those negative perceptions, negative realities, how to make things less stressful, how to make it a more attractive work environment is going to really put a good step in the stepping stone process, if you will, towards us having longevity in our practices. So, how do we go about getting feedback? Who do we get it from? These are just some suggestions for you. Obviously, I think you have to consider your individual practices and what may or may not be a fit. So, typical surveys, and in a minute, I have some suggestions as to free surveys, like softwares that you can use. So, these don't necessarily have to cost you anything other than some time to put them together. Debriefs with your staff, interviews with your staff or with your clients, talking to your team, talking to your clients, talking to referral partners. And I would suggest creating a sample list of questions. They might be different across those different buckets of individuals that you're talking to. But I think if you're going to survey your clients, you want those questions to be fairly consistent across your clients. If you're going to survey your team, you want those questions to be fairly consistent across your team. Just a couple of little thoughts and notes on these where you can sort of like self analyze what's a good fit for you. I firmly, firmly, firmly believe in doing a debrief with your team. Your team will give you the best insight into what worked and what didn't work, what was stressing them out, where were they struggling, where were they feeling like they were spinning their wheels. If you can have an honest feedback conversation with them, they're going to give you the best insight as to how to improve efficiency and reduce stress and improve productivity. When you're looking at clients, I sort of go into surveys with clients with a little bit of a grain of salt mentality. Think this one through. I don't necessarily think that client surveys is a must have. It's probably a nice practice, but you have to be willing to sort of wade through what you're going to potentially get for responses. General human behavior is, and probably most of you experience this with things like asking for Google reviews or testimonials, is you generally will get unsolicited negative comments, whereas it's more challenging to get unsolicited positive comments, right? So the hope with asking for the survey is that you're going to solicit positive feedback as well as you're probably going to receive some of those complaints. And I think you just have to kind of be willing to wade through some of that because some of it is going to contain things like, well, my tax return wasn't filed on time, and it's coming from Sally who can never give you her documents on time. So you're going to have some of that if you survey your clients, which is why I'm not always a huge proponent of spending a ton of time there. I think just a quick piece of advice on that is that if you're going to do client surveys, make sure that your questions that you're asking your clients are very intentional in terms of what you specifically want feedback on. And maybe send it to a specific subset of clients that you can trust to give you some honest feedback and not necessarily just sort of like take the opportunity to complain to you. And maybe skip some questions around how timely did we file your tax return. If you know that the majority of timeliness is based off of the client behavior, just don't ask those questions. Ask instead, like, how easy was it for you to communicate with us, as an example for you. And then your referral partners. I like this one. I think it's one that's missed a lot that we don't think about. But if you have, say, you're a tax practice where you get a lot of your referrals from maybe a bookkeeping practice, you have a bookkeeper that you work with and they send you a lot of tax work, have a conversation with them, have a debrief with them, or a quick coffee chat with them and just say, hey, how responsive was our team? Were your clients satisfied with their communication with us? How can we work together more efficiently next year? And that's an area that I think we commonly forget about. But don't forget about those referral partners, because they're a big source of your revenue. And you want to make sure that that relationship is as efficient as possible going into another tax season as well. So then how do you analyze feedback? Like if you're going to do any or all of those, you're going to get feedback, and then it's sort of like, well, what do we do with it? And how do we wade through things that we don't need? How do we focus on the things that we do need? So some easy tips for you there. Look for recurring themes. Like if every single one of your team members says, um, the data that we received from clients was all over the place. We were getting some here, some there, some here, some there, and they're all consistently telling you that that was a pain point for them during the filing season. Then that is a recurring theme that I would say you want to pay attention to before next year. That's something that you want to look at and say, okay, how do we sort of solve for this problem before next filing season to address this specific pain point that's affecting multiple people? Or if all of your clients are saying, hey, your portal is terrible, I can never find what I need, I can't communicate with you, I send a message, it seems like it goes nowhere, that's a recurring theme that you might want to pay attention to. I like the idea also of mapping positive and negative feedback. So, sort of putting them into buckets of like, this is all positive feedback, this is all negative feedback. That might also make it easier for you to identify some of those recurring themes. So then you can identify, hey, what are some of the recurring themes of things that we did really well that we want to make sure we continue to do because people really liked that? What are some recurring themes of things that we need to work on? And these are the free tools that I mentioned. So SurveyMonkey, MailChimp, Jotform, Typeform, Google Forms. I think all of these, except for maybe Google Forms, does at some point have like a paid version that probably has more tools available to you. But all of these also have a free version that allows you to send out surveys, collect that feedback, kind of sort and organize that feedback. So these are all things that you could use to set up those consistent questions that you can send out to either clients or your team members, especially if you have team members that you feel like aren't likely to give you honest feedback in like a face-to-face conversation. Like maybe they would be better at giving you anonymous feedback. Then this is a tool that you could use to collect feedback without them having to sit across the desk from you or across the Zoom channel from you face to face. So then let's use that data. Let's actually take the time to look at that. So, frequently, I feel like this happens more with client surveys, but frequently we take the time to ask for feedback and then we don't actually take the next step of figuring out what are we going to do with it? How do we actually make a plan for some type of change management over time to make sure that we're addressing the recurring themes that we find? So, once you have sort of those recurring themes, it will help you to better decide on what are you going to focus on? What are the next steps going to be? And I put here to focus on high impact, high frequency items. So what that means is you want to look for sort of the low hanging fruit. That's what this is really focusing on, which might be, what is something small that we could do that might affect a larger portion of the feedback that we're receiving. So let's take the issue with teams that I mentioned where they're saying we're getting data from a bunch of different places and it's really convoluted and we have all these different places that we have to check to receive client data before we know whether or not we have everything from the client. So if that's affecting everybody, it's affecting every return. It's potentially affecting your clients too, because they have multiple avenues of sending you information. That might be something that's a very high impact item where you can say, okay, it might not be a super simple project, but it also may be that we just need to figure out the one source that we're going to focus on streamlining all of our data collection through. High frequency items is something that's happening all the time. That might be more like communication, where you're communicating back and forth with clients every day, multiple points throughout the day. So something like that, if that's broken, that might be a high frequency item that you want to look at. But when you're kind of looking at your recurring themes, what you want to focus on is those high impact, high frequency items. So you're going to want to spend your time between now and next season focusing on something that is either going to make the biggest like change, like it's going to move the needle the furthest in terms of improving an inefficiency or a stressor, or something that is affecting your team or your clients, basically every day. If it's affecting them a lot, that's something that you want to pay attention to. And then actually assign people to be in charge of a change management project. So if you have your team, all saying this is an issue, choose someone to sort of spearhead the project of making that change. Choose someone that's going to maybe look at technology, look at software, get more information from the team in terms of like what should the process look like? How do we write an SOP for this? And then actually track your project progression. So what happens is we take all this time to get this great feedback. Maybe you even do the next step of analyzing the feedback, but then there's no actual project with a timeline put into place to say, okay, we have the feedback, we know what we need to change. Now who's going to change it and who's going to be responsible for making sure that those changes occur? So actually make this a tracked project with some deadlines and someone responsible for moving this forward as we go through the rest of the year. So some common inefficiencies. I know you guys are just coming out of tax season, so these are probably not a surprise, but just to bring them back to your attention and things that you can do about them before now and next season. Manual data entry. So if we're still hand keying a lot of things in terms of our tax preparation, document collection delays. I know that this is a huge issue for everybody, us too. We have implemented a ton of technology, a ton of communication to try to streamline document collection. And you're always, always, always dealing with human behavior. But I think that there's always something that we can learn every year to try to still improve this process. Bottlenecks in the review process. I know that that's a really common one. Another area that you can look at technology trying to help improve that for you. And then any types of communication gaps, whether that's between your team, whether that's between you and clients, like where did balls get dropped? Where was somebody unclear about what the process was, or what was exactly supposed to happen? And then how do we address some of those? So I mentioned at the beginning this conversation that I had had recently with someone where we were talking about the gaps in accounting in general in terms of, staffing and capacity. And we've done a lot of webinars. You can go out to the Insightful Accountant website. You can put in the search bar, AI or artificial intelligence, and you will have a ton of articles come up. You can go out to our YouTube channel, also search it. And I know that I've done several webinars on AI implementation specific to tax practices and tax processes. So there's a lot of information out there that we have just on our Insightful website in terms of how to put technology into place to improve your tax process. I'll just give you another quick plug for Be Insightful because I wrote a white paper last year on how to use and leverage technology and put technology into a place specifically for your tax preparation season. So if you're not a member, you don't have access to that white paper, but it was pretty lengthy, pretty detailed, and we did a tech stack chart with that white paper in terms of suggestions. But just some quick suggestions for you looking at automated data extraction, OCR. So if you are not using tax software that has OCR built into that, whether that be OCR to put together your work papers, meaning like it's recognizing data in your W 2s and 1099s, commonly used forms. Then you definitely want to be looking at how can I implement OCR before next season for data extraction because that's a very commonly used technology that can save you a lot of time. Smart categorizations for transactions. If you're a practice that is doing any bookkeeping or helping to clean up bookkeeping as part of your tax preparation process, which I know some of us do and some of us don't, there's a lot of different technology out there that helps to improve transaction categorization, making sure that things are in the right spot before you begin your tax prep process. Nothing is more frustrating than getting a draft of a tax return out only for you to review it with your client and have them say, that line item doesn't look right. There's something recorded in there that shouldn't be there. AI chatbots for clients. So, this is also, if you're not feeling like the AI technology, this is also something that you can have up on your website, FAQs. But it's pretty easy now to find somebody that can build you a basic chatbot for your clients that you can also put on your website where they can ask questions like, when is my tax return due? When are my estimates due? When should I get my accountant my documents by? Do I need to send my accountant a copy of my 1099? What does a W 2 look like? So you could build pretty easily a basic chatbot that will help to address some of those frequent client questions that maybe don't need an actual person to answer for you. So we get a lot of questions around, when do I need to get you my documents by? And it doesn't matter how many times we've sent that communication out, but having either a chatbot or an FAQ on your website that you can just point people back to will cut down how much time you're spending either, in chats with clients or in email with clients. And then AI task prioritization. So this one is kind of a new one that we're starting to see in some of the ERPs. I know that Carbon has it, where it actually suggests prioritization of tasks for you and your team based off of due dates, communication notes that you've put into that task. So if you are finding it difficult just to manage your task load during tax season and keep your team, working on the highest priority items, then you might want to look at an ERP system that has some built-in task prioritization suggestions for you. And then we're seeing error detection and review software get better as well. So there's more AI software out there now being built into a lot of the softwares that accountants are already using to help to identify error detection, to help to identify in the review process, hey, this is something that you want to look at because it doesn't seem right, either based off of last year or statistically it doesn't seem right. I know that Intuit Pro Connect is starting to build some of that into their tax software as well. So that now again is the time for you to be looking at all of these things going into next season. Because again, you have the longest time period right now to identify what's going to be good fits for you and actually implement things on a timely basis, which means time to implement, test, work any kinks out, write SOPs for your team before you're just all of a sudden in another filing season. And then things that you want to debrief on your team with, what worked, what didn't work, what should we start doing before next year, what should we stop doing before next year, and what should we continue doing for next year. I think that one's great. That one's one that doesn't come up very often. And if you're not familiar with EOS Worldwide, I probably need a copyright just on this slide for mentioning it, but they have a ton of free surveys and information on their website. You can take some of their free surveys yourself, just in terms of like your internal management, how you're feeling. They have some free surveys that you can send to your team. They're very general management, so they're not necessarily tax practice focused. But if you're feeling like you just have a little bit of writer's block in terms of what do I ask my team and what are important things for me to get their feedback on, there's some good free survey tools on their website. So, key takeaways for today, we want to prioritize based on urgent versus important. So, like the biggest, again, those high impact, high frequency items, the ones that are going to make the biggest change for you are what we want to focus on. You might have some things that are important for you to address before next tax season, but like if your whole team is ready to quit because they're super stressed out, that one's obviously a little bit more urgent and we want to get to the bottom of it. Focus on quick wins versus long-term investments, at least at the get-go. So get that low-hanging fruit and then take on those long-term investment projects over time. You may identify that you need to maybe completely overhaul your tax software or your tech stack. That's a longer-term investment. That's a larger project, but I guarantee you that if you take a look at some of this feedback, you'll find some lower hanging fruit that you can make quicker, faster changes on. Evaluate your turnaround times. How long would it take you to implement some of these? Track your progress and define your metrics. How do you know whether or not you're going to be successful by next tax season? Is it that you have better client satisfaction? Are you going to file less extensions next year? What is the metric that you're trying to get to in terms of taking this analysis and putting some of those improvement processes into place? So we are right at 12:30. I don't want to keep anyone, but if you have any questions, please feel free to pop them into the Q&A. I know that we will send out both the slide deck and the recording will be up and available for you in case you want to come back to any of this and spend some more time on it. And you can feel free to contact me at any point in time and ask any follow-up questions as well. Awesome. I see no Q&A, so you guys are either really quiet and tired today, just a week out of tax season, or hopefully that was really helpful. All right, perfect. Thank you all for being here. I appreciate it. And I hope that we will see you all in May at the Be Insightful next tax session as well.